Chapter 2017. After a moment of silence, Chai Feng asked the question that he wanted to ask the most along the way. Second uncle, are we going to enter the volcano forest again? Ever since he encountered the scorpion mercenaries and almost lost his life, he had been thinking about this problem along the way. They had gone to other places to gain experience before, but this time, there were also some disciples who didn't have much experience following them. Among them, there were a few women from the clan. If Little Nine hadn't thought of a way to reverse the situation and save everyone's lives, he was afraid that none of them would have survived. Moreover, he felt that compared to the people inside, their strength was still too weak. Even if the person leading them was the most talented second master of the Chai family, who was a cultivator at the beginner immortal realm, it was impossible for him to protect so many of them. In his heart, he vaguely hoped that he could return home or find a new place to train. It did not have to be the Fire Mountain Forest. When Second Master Chai heard Chai Feng's words, he was stunned and looked at him with a slightly twisted gaze. We're already here. Are we still going back? Cultivation is against the heavens, so there will naturally be many obstacles on our way of cultivation. Some of them may even lead to death. Can we retreat just because there are dangers ahead? If we retreat, I'm afraid we won't be able to improve our strength for the rest of our lives. But we've only just reached the outskirts of the inner area. I'm worried that if we continue to walk in, all of us might really die here. Upon hearing this, Second Master Chai immediately reprimanded him. Nonsense. The scorpion mercenaries are gone now, so there won't be many people left in the forest. If you're afraid of danger, you can just raise your guard. What's there to worry about? Chai Feng lowered his head and did not say anything else. He knew that they would not listen to his suggestion even if he made it. Everyone rested in the forest until the sky gradually darkened. Today's battle had exhausted them. Now that they were relaxed, they felt weak all over. Compared to the people sitting around the fire under the tree, Fengjiu leaned against the tree and slept. She took advantage of the night's rest to explore the things in the interspatial rings and Qianquan bags with her divine sense. She found one of the fire's spark stones. However, there were people guarding the surrounding trees, so she could not enter the space. She could only use her divine sense to scan the area and remember the characteristics of the fire spark stones. The next morning, after a good night's rest, everyone woke up in high spirits. They stretched their bodies one by one and got ready to continue walking into the depths of the forest after organizing themselves. The rest of the journey was rather peaceful. Occasionally, small beasts would appear, but they would be repelled by them. The peaceful training made them gradually forget about the dangers from before. Until one morning, when they were walking towards the depths of the forest, they heard voices coming from the forest ahead. I'll go and take a look first, Fan Yishuo said. He gave some instructions to the people behind him and went ahead to explore the path. It was only because the Chai family's people had been scouting the way that they had followed. Now that they had heard the sound, they naturally had to check it out. Chapter 2019. If it was an enemy, Fan Yishuo should have given her a hint. However, there was no movement in front of them. Did that mean they knew each other? She could use her divine consciousness to investigate, but since she could sense the strength of the divine consciousness, she naturally would not use her divine consciousness to investigate. Otherwise, it would easily arouse the other party's suspicion and attention. As for who it was, she believed she would find out soon. Hunyuan nodded and said, "You guys are lucky. We haven't met the Scorpion mercenary group for quite some time, but you guys got surrounded as soon as you entered the inner area." Fan Yishuo nodded and said, "You guys are lucky. We haven't met the Scorpion mercenary group for quite some time, but you guys got surrounded as soon as you entered the inner area. TSK. Speaking of which, your luck is really heaven-defying. Not a single one of you died after encountering the scorpion mercenaries. You're only injured, yet you're still alive and well. It seems that this person really has some luck. As he spoke, he looked at Zhuo Junyue and said, look at his luck, and then look at yours. TSK. Zhuo Junyue glanced at the old man expressionlessly and looked away indifferently, too lazy to talk to him. Speaking of which, it's fortunate that Xiao Zhou was here. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for us to avoid this disaster. As Fan Isho spoke, he looked at the old man in front of him and said, Martial Granduncle, are you also looking for the Firespark Stone? Would it be possible for you to travel with us? Speaking of this, he lowered his head in shame. After entering here, this disciple realized that it was difficult for me to even protect myself with my own strength. Now that I have a few junior brothers and sisters with me, I can't return with the Firespark Stone and report back. If I enter again, I'm worried that I'll lose my life here, so. Hunyuan stroked his beard but did not agree. Instead, he looked at the man standing quietly beside him and asked, Junyue, what do you think? As you wish. His words were concise and did not say much. Hunyuanzi thought for a moment before nodding. That's fine. Anyway, there are only two of us. Especially since this guy is a blockhead who doesn't speak much. It's quite boring to be with him. Hearing this, Fan Isho joyfully expressed his thanks, many thanks to Grand Marshal Uncle, many thanks to this. He suddenly remembered that Grand Marshal Uncle didn't mention who this young master was. His surname is Zhua. His name is Zhuo Junyue. Primordial Chaos said without further introduction. Thank you, young Master Zhua. He hurriedly bowed and looked at the people on the ground. Don't worry about the people on the ground. Even if they don't die, they won't amount to anything. Let's go. Hunyuan waved his hand and let him lead the way. At this moment, the people from Chai family and Nebula sect saw that Fan Isho hadn't returned after such a long time. They couldn't help but worry. Why haven't you come back yet? Could something have happened to him? Why don't I go take a look? There's no need. Look, he's back. But who are those two? One of them said as he looked at the old man and the man who followed behind. Fingzhou, who was drinking water under the tree, couldn't help but choke when he saw the old man and the young man walking over. Cough, cough. She patted her chest and quickly went behind the tree. After catching her breath, she picked up the water bag and put it into the space. Then, she quietly poked her head out from behind the tree to look at the two people. Since they were all from the Nebula Immortal sect, they should know each other. However, after thinking about it, he felt that something was amiss. This primordial chaos had always been elusive and had an extraordinary status in the Nebula Immortal sect. How could he know a small disciple? However, from the looks of it, it seemed like he had really interacted with Xiao Zhou before. Interacted? When he thought of this, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. One was the sect's Mount Tai, and the other was a small disciple of the sect. How could these two have interacted? Does Martial Granduncle know Xiao Zhou? Chapter 2021. Humph. This little bastard, I can recognize him even if he turns into ashes. The old man said angrily. He stepped forward and shouted, Little bastard, stop sleeping. I know you're pretending. Get up now. Fingzhou rubbed her eyes and opened them blankly. When she saw the crowd surrounding her, she was shocked. She patted her chest and said, Why are you all surrounding me? I just took a short nap. Did something happen? Don't pretend, kid. How dare you say you don't recognize this old man? Hunyuanzi suddenly leaned his face in front of Fengzhou and glared at her. Fengzhou blinked and shook her head. Old man, I don't know you. Then, she asked carefully, have we met before? Originally, when Hunyuan saw him shake his head, he thought that this kid was quite sensible and didn't dare to pretend not to know him. However, when he heard what he said, he was so angry that he snorted heavily. He glared at him and pointed at him. You little bastard. You heartless little bastard. How dare you say you don't recognize me? You say that again. I dare you to say it again. Looking at the old man who wanted to sit on the ground and act shamelessly, Fengzhou secretly curled her lips and said good-naturedly, I really don't know you. I've never seen you before. Then, she thought for a moment and said, could it be that you've seen me and forgotten me? I don't think so. I don't have any impression of you. You're still talking. You're still talking. You. I knew it, I knew you wouldn't admit it so easily, you little bastard. The more he spoke, the more aggrieved he felt. He crossed his arms and sat down in front of Fengzhou like an old urchin. He stared at Fengzhou with reddened eyes. Seeing the dignified grandmaster of a generation, Tai Shan of the Nebula Immortal Sect, childishly sitting on the ground in front of the youth with his arms crossed in front of his chest, staring at him with grievance and anger, everyone was at a loss. What the hell is going on here? Second Master Chai pulled Fan Yishuo aside and asked, is this really Senior Hunyuan? Are you sure? Fan Yishuo was also a bit embarrassed. He said, it can't be wrong. Martial Granduncle has always been carefree. His character is. For a moment, Fan Yishuo couldn't find any other words to say. He only said, it's like this. Second Master Chai, please don't take offense. No. But what's going on between him and Xiaozhou? Why is it that one person says he knows him, while the other says he doesn't? Fan Yishuo shook his head and sighed. I don't know either. Even the second master of the Chai family did not know what was going on between Xiaozhou and Grand Marshal Uncle. How would he know if the two of them had met before? Fengzhou, who was leaning against the tree, saw the old man glaring at her and sitting in front of her. She couldn't help but ask embarrassedly, old man. What are you doing? Humph. You little bastard, don't you know what I'm trying to do? Hunyuan snorted. He was going to waste his time with him. This time, he couldn't let him escape. Fengzhou rubbed her head and smiled foolishly. I really don't know. She didn't believe that he could force her to admit it. Yes, I know. Of course, she knew that the old man didn't have any ill intentions towards her. He only wanted her to be his disciple, but she refused and even swindled him out of a treasure like the Aurora teleportation scroll. However, it wasn't exactly swindling. It was something she deserved after she cured Zhuo Junyue's poison. He looked back and saw Zhuo Junyue and Xiaozhou at the back. He could not help but shout, Xiaozhou, run! Run! Zhuo Junyue looked at the calm and fearless young man beside him and asked, aren't you afraid? Chapter 2024. With a wave of the youth's hand, a flame flew out. With a whoosh, the flame landed in front of the carnivorous ants. The carnivorous ants that were crawling forward couldn't dodge in time, and with a hiss, a large area was burned. A foul smell accompanied by the smell of burnt flesh spread out, and instantly filled the air. Zhuo Junyu saw the boy's footsteps move slightly and his entire body move several meters in an instant. Zhuo Junyu could not help but be slightly surprised. He glanced at the boy and waved his sword to attack the man-eating ants behind him. Two streaks of sword aura followed him forward and came to the boy's side. Screams and screams could be heard from the front. It turned out that other than the carnivorous ants behind them, the carnivorous ants on the left and right had surrounded them. Some of the slower ones were devoured by the carnivorous ants and turned into white bones in an instant. Some were bitten by the ants and screamed as they covered their wounds and ran. Run! Run! Hunyuanzi could not help but scold them when he saw them running in panic. Don't run to the left and right. Run forward. Forward. He burned a large number of carnivorous ants while protecting them. However, there were too many of them and they could not be burned to death. Moreover, they could not fight. The group of people ran forward madly. Behind them, wherever the man-eating ants passed, the trees were hollowed out, the weeds were pushed down, and the densely packed army of man-eating ants chased them from behind, not letting them go. There's a stream in front. Cross the stream. Quick! Second Master Chai shouted as he led the group across the stream that was a few meters wide. As the group fled across the stream, the carnivorous ants that were chasing them finally circled around the stream and left. Seeing this, the group heaved a sigh of relief and sat down while panting. That was close. Why were there carnivorous ants there? A member of the Chai family asked with a pale face. He could not help but shudder when he thought of the man who had turned into white bones in an instant. There were so many carnivorous ants that they could not fight even if they wanted to. There were too many of them and they were small targets. They could only run for their lives if they encountered them. Second Master Chai panted lightly. He glanced at his family members and ordered the people beside him, check how many of them died. How many were injured? Yes. The middle-aged man beside him responded and checked how many of the Chai family's disciples were missing and how many of them had been bitten. Second uncle, what happens if you're bitten by a man-eating ant? A young man asked in a trembling voice. He held his arm with one hand, and his face was still pale. Second Master Chai took a deep breath and looked at Hun Yuanzi with a slight frown. Immortal monarch, we have never encountered man-eating ants. May I ask what will happen if we are bitten by them? Nothing. Hun Yuanzi said as he looked around for Zhuo Junhua and Fingzhou. However, he could not find them and could not help but frown. Second Master Chai's heart sank when he heard this. What would happen if nothing happened? When they came here, they had heard that the man-eating ants were one of the 5 poisonous creatures in the volcanic forest. However, they did not know what would happen to the people who were bitten. Fan Yishuo also held his arm. He walked up and asked with a serious expression, Martial Granduncle, disciple was also bitten. However, other than the pain, there doesn't seem to be anything else. I should be fine, right? Chapter 2025. The mere thought of this sent chills down his spine. Was the fire-spark stone more important than them in his master's eyes? Was he not afraid that they would not be able to return? He did not let his father know that he had come here. If he really died here, his parents would not be able to accept it. Among the 6 of them, only junior sister had mentioned the volcano forest to her father. The others did not know about it at all. Hunyuan, who was looking for Zhuo Junhua and Fingzhou, frowned and glanced at him. His gaze landed on Hunyuan's arm, and he scolded, since you don't know anything, how dare you enter the volcano forest? Your master sent you to your deaths, and you really came. You are all brainless. Fan Yishuo and the rest of the Chai all lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak after being scolded by Hunyuan. They truly didn't think things through, especially the second master. He couldn't help but feel regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have brought them here to train. If all of them were to die here, he wouldn't be able to escape the blame even if he returned alive. In the end, he was overconfident. He thought that he could bring his family members into the volcano forest to train because he was an immortal expert. He did not expect to encounter danger again and again. At this moment, the Chai family's doctor shook his head after examining the injured members of the Chai family. He said to Second Master Chai, Second Master Chai, they look fine now. It's just some superficial wounds. I have already asked them to treat the wounds and apply some medicine. I just don't know that he just did not know if there would be any other symptoms later. Especially when he saw that Han Yuan didn't say much, he didn't have much confidence. However, he couldn't find anything at the moment. Immortal Monarch, please tell us what will happen if we are bitten by the man-eating ants. We can prepare in advance. Second Master Chai had a bad feeling. If the bites were just superficial wounds, the Han Yuan Immortal Monarch would not look so bad. Uncle Master. Fan Yishio also called out, looking at him uneasily. The surrounding people, whether they were bitten by the ants or not, all looked at Han Yuanzi. Han Yuan snorted when he saw everyone looking at him. He said angrily, "Why are you looking at me? I don't know any medicine. Why do you think the man-eating ants are listed as one of the 5 volcanic poisons? Of course, it's because of their poison. But I did not find any traces of poison on their bodies." The doctor from the Chai family said doubtfully. He did not find any traces of poison. How could it be because of the ants' poison? Just because you did not find any traces doesn't mean there's no poison. Ordinary poison can be cured with antidotes. But this is the poison of the man-eating ants' poison. Han Yuan to Han Yuan. Chapter 2026. Many of them had been bitten by the carnivorous ants. If what he said was true, then wouldn't they be dead for sure? What can I do? I don't know any medicine. Han Yuanzi said angrily. His eyes were still looking around. He was puzzled. Where were the 2 boys? Marshal Granduncle, can't we cure it even if we have the antidote? I just took the antidote. It's a level 4 pill. Should it work? Fan Yishio asked. His face was pale and his heart was heavy. For a chance of survival, he had even taken the level 4 antidote his father gave him. He just didn't know if it would work. It's useless, it's useless. The reason why these man-eating ants are one of the 5 poisons of the volcano forest is because the man-eating ants here are used to the high temperature of the volcano. They are not ordinary man-eating ants, but the tail of each man-eating ant has fire poison. I have never heard of anyone who has been bitten surviving. Then we can't be saved. One of them muttered. Han Yuanzi glanced at them and stroked his beard. He said slowly, "It's not that there's no hope." After hearing his words, a glimmer of hope rose in the hearts of the people who were already in despair. Immortal Monarch, please show us a way out. That little bastard. Let's see if that little bastard can save you. Han Yuanzi snorted. Looking at these people, they didn't know that there was such a skilled little bastard in their clan. And they were still trying to save him. They were holding a life-saving treasure in their arms but didn't know how to use it. These people had lived in vain. Little bastard. Everyone was puzzled. After thinking for a while, they asked carefully, "Is it Xiao Zhou? Who else could it be? That little bastard's medical skills are brilliant. If he wants to save you, you will naturally be able to survive. He could also cure the poison from the carnivorous ants." They believed that the fire poison of the carnivorous ants would not be difficult for him. Everyone was shocked. At this time, they looked around and found that the young man in green was not here. Even the man surnamed Shuo was not here. They couldn't help but tremble. They were focused on escaping and forgot about the young man. He couldn't have been bitten by the carnivorous ants, right? He's not here. Chai Feng also reacted. Could Xiao Jiu be in danger? Why aren't you with us? I'll go back and look for it. I'll go with you. The rest of you can rest here. Second Master Chai then turned to the crowd and said, "If they come back, ask him to take a look at your wounds. If we can't find him, we will come back as soon as possible." With that, he turned to Han Yuanzi and said, "Immortal Monarch, please take care of the people here. We'll be back soon." Go, go. Thinking that the Chai family was that little bastard's clansman, Hunyuanzi didn't show any displeasure. He just waved his hand and found a place to sit down. Although he did not have much hope for the kid's skills, he believed that the kid would not die with Zhua Junue, that blockhead, following him. He was probably just lost in the forest. Chapter 2028. N. Ah. Hiss. Ah. Everyone was wailing in pain, causing the people who were taking care of them to panic. The doctor from the Chai family was busy checking on their bodies, but he was also at a loss of what to do. Immortal monarch, what should we do? The heat poison in their bodies has begun to act up. The doctor from the Chai family came to Hunyuanzi's side and said anxiously. There's no use asking me. I've already said that I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to cure this thing. Hunyuanzi was not in a good mood either. Seeing those people crying out in pain, and among them were disciples from the Nebula Immortal sect, how could he feel good? But it was useless to ask him. He really had no other choice. 3 female disciples from the Nebula Immortal sect surrounded Fan Isho, their faces full of worry. Eldest senior brother, how are you? Can you hold on? I'm fine. Fan Isho panted lightly as the heat poison in his body flared up. His entire body was scalding hot to the point where it was about to emit smoke. However, even though he was drenched in cold sweat and his face was flushed red, he had at least consumed a rank 4 detoxification pill earlier, which had somewhat alleviated the heat poison. Compared to the others who had already begun to vomit, his consciousness was still relatively clear. Eldest senior brother. The 3 girls looked at him with tears in their eyes, worried that he would die like this. Along the way, he had been taking care of them. If it was not for saving them, he would not have been bitten by the man-eating ants. The 2 men sitting next to him had dark expressions. Seeing their senior brother in such a state, they felt as if there was a fire burning in their hearts. One of them said in a deep voice, "When we return, I will definitely choose a new master. I don't want to stay at Jade Forest Mountain any longer. After leaving here, I will not return to Jade Forest Mountain. I will go home directly and have my father write a letter to the Immortal Sect." The man next to him said in a deep voice. Entering here was the worst decision ever. Hearing their words, the 3 women wiped away their tears as well, and said, "We don't want to return to Jade Forest Mountain either. Master doesn't even care about our lives. If not for eldest senior martial brother protecting us throughout the journey, we would have long lost our lives." Fan Isho moved his lips, wanting to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, he could not say anything. The danger of this trip was far beyond their expectations. If they still couldn't see their master's attitude towards them at this moment, then they would have lived in vain. Hunyuan, who was sitting in front of them, glanced at them when he heard their words. He unscrewed the wine pot at his waist and took a sip. He snorted and said, "You don't need such a master. If you follow him, you'll die a mysterious death sooner or later." He did not care about the actions of the Jade Forest Mountain Lord either. He allowed these few juniors to enter, and did not even send a person with a stronger strength to lead them. If they had not met him, they would have long died countless of times. "Oh no, someone's dead." The doctor from the Chai family cried out in alarm. He saw a member of the Chai family vomit. His body twitched for a while before he stopped moving. He went forward to check on him and found that he was no longer breathing. He was clearly dead. Hunyuan frowned and went forward to take a look. Then, he shook his head. "There's nothing I can do even if he dies. We're back." Chai Feng shouted from the other side of the stream. Raising his chi, he swept across the stream together with Fengzhou and the others, and landed on the grassland. Chapter 2029. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a green figure walk past him and into the middle of the crowd. Second Master Chai and the others followed. Even Hunyuan Master tugged at his beard and went forward to take a look. Fengjiu walked forward and knelt down beside the dead man. He stretched out 2 fingers to feel the artery in the man's neck and bent down to listen to his heartbeat. Then, he pressed his hands on the man's chest and gave him first aid. After 10 minutes, he took out a silver needle to open up the man's blocked airway. The man vomited violently and regained his breath. Hiss. He's awake. He's not awake, he's alive. Heavens. Xiaozhou's medical skills are that good. He can even revive a person who's already dead. Instantly, everyone's shocked and excited eyes fell on Fengjiu, especially those who had been bitten by the man-eating ants. They surrounded him. Xiaozhou, Xiaozhou, you have to save me. I was bitten by the man-eating ants. My body is burning and I feel like I'm dying. Xiaozhou. Xiaozhou, me too. Me too. One by one, they squeezed forward. Fengjiu could not help but frown. He stepped back and said, "Don't push. Quiet down." Hearing his words, everyone quieted down. Hope reignited in their eyes. Hunyuan Master Chai was right. Xiaozhou's medical skills were really good. The fire poison is not without an antidote. She looked at them and said, "I went to pick some herbs earlier. When I refine the herbs, you will have the antidote. The calmer your mind is, the slower the fire poison will flare up. You should sit quietly for a while." After she finished speaking, she said to the Chai family's doctor, "Uncle Chai, come and help me." "Okay, okay." The doctor hurriedly responded and followed her to the stream. Only then did Primordial Chaos sit down. He stroked his beard and said, "I told you. This little bastard must have a way." With that, he waved at Zhuo Junyue. "Come here. I have something to ask you." Zhuo Junyue looked at the young man who was sitting by the stream and taking out many things from his space. His eyes flashed. Although Fengjiu had cured him last time, he had been in a coma. Today, he saw him save a dead man with his own eyes. It seemed that his medical skills were really good. He had reached the miraculous stage of bringing the dead back to life. Hearing the old man calling him, Zhuo Junyue walked over to him and sat down beside him. "What's the matter?" he asked while keeping an eye on Feng Aix's movements. Hunyuan Zi looked at him and asked, "What did you do in the end?" When Zhuo Junyue heard this, he frowned slightly. "What do you mean, what did they do after that?" "You know what I mean," Primordial Chaos said. "Did you catch up at the back? You said you didn't know him. It seems that little bastard is picky." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. The person he wanted to take as his disciple did not care about him. Instead, he got along well with this blockhead. He really had no taste. Moreover, I did mention it before I did it. I'll be rewarded. Didn't you say you didn't know the old man? What? Now you remember. The old man sat cross-legged and crossed his arms in front of his chest, snorting. You've been reminding me along the way. How could I not remember? She smiled and looked at him, but, so what if I remember? You can't take back what's in my hands. Moreover, I didn't cheat you to get it. It's my reward. He narrowed his eyes and stared at him while saying, "Old man, I think your wine is more fragrant. I am an old man, so you have to respect me, do you understand?" Feng Jiu started laughing when she heard this. She stared at the old man who had a rosy complexion and a smooth face that didn't have a single wrinkle. She said, "Besides your white hair, beard, and eyebrows, you don't look like an old man at all." Chapter 2032. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when he saw the old man's smug expression. She didn't dare to listen to him. He turned his body slightly and moved to the other side, taking another sip of wine. Seeing that the little bastard was drinking with his back facing him and ignoring him, the old man glared at him. "Little bastard, are you listening to what this old man is saying?" "Little bastard." The old man jumped in front of him. "I'm talking to you." "I'm not a little bastard," Fengjiu said as she held the wine in her arms and refused to give it to him. "You're a little bastard. You took my treasure the first time we met. If you're not a little bastard, then what are you?" He was angry when he thought about that. This kid was too cunning. Fengjiu quickly put away the wine gourd and stood up. He walked over to Second Master Chai. "Second Master, when are we leaving?" Second Master Chai respected Feng Nine even more because he had saved them twice in a row. He did not look down on Feng Nine just because he was a teenager. Hearing Feng Ix's question, Second Master Chai said, "I'll discuss it with the immortal monarch." Then he walked towards Hunyuanzi. Not long after, Hunyuan and Second Master Chai finished their discussion. The group moved forward again. "Has the immortal master been here before?" Second Master Chai asked. "Of course." As Master Hunyuan spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu from the corner of his eyes and inwardly cursed. This little bastard, he had repeatedly brought up the matter of taking Fengjiu as his master and yet he had still managed to fool him. He didn't believe that with his prestige, he wouldn't be able to take this boy as his disciple. Hearing this, Second Master Chai asked again, "How long until we reach the crater?" "According to our speed, we should be able to reach that area in about 10 days. However, this is assuming that the journey is peaceful. If something were to happen along the way, it would be hard to say." Hun Yuanzi walked leisurely with his hands behind his back. He was thinking about how he could make that brat obediently acknowledge him as his master during this period of time. That little bastard definitely didn't know how strong he was. As long as he knew how strong he was, he would definitely rush over and beg him to be his disciple. When he inexplicably thought of that scene, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. His eyebrows were full of joy. Oh, just thinking about it made him excited. What should he do? No, he had to find a chance to show off his skills. He had to show that little bastard how strong he was. Shui Junyue, who was walking beside Hun Yuanzi, saw that the old man's expression kept changing along the way. He didn't know what happy things the old man was thinking, but the corners of the old man's mouth were almost reaching behind his ears. Shui Junyue was even more puzzled when he saw the old man's spirited expression. The old man was angry just a moment ago. She thought that she could have a good night's rest. Unexpectedly, she heard some movement in the middle of the night. She opened her eyes and quickly sat up. At the same time, Shui Junyue, who was on the same tree, opened his eyes and sat up. He glanced at Feng Nine and then looked around. Hunyuan, who was resting by the bonfire, had also noticed the movement. He instinctively looked at Fengjiu on the tree and was surprised to see that he had also woken up. This kid's vigilance isn't bad. He thought to himself as he kicked Fan Yishuo and the others beside him. Chapter 2034. What are you doing, Marshal Granduncle? Get up. We're surrounded, the old man said angrily. Everyone in the Chai family was startled by his words. Surrounded. The Chai family members were on high alert. Why didn't the night watchman alert us? Second Master Chai used his divine sense to investigate and his face turned serious. He's been killed. There was a faint smell of blood in the air and a low and oppressive murderous aura permeated the air, making the night even colder. Everyone's hearts sank when they heard this. He was killed. He was killed without making a sound. What a powerful skill. What a brilliant assassination technique. To think that he didn't even make a single sound when he killed someone. Seeing that there was no movement around, Hunyuanzi signaled Second Master Chai to speak. Seeing this, Second Master Chai shouted in a deep voice, "Who is it? Come out." Hee, I didn't expect there to be one or two capable people in this inconspicuous team. A sneer was heard. That person's voice was cold and his voice was filled with a powerful pressure. Almost as soon as the voice spread, the blood and qi of some of the weaker members of the Chai family started to churn. A faint feeling of discomfort appeared. Hunyuanzi frowned when he saw that some of them could no longer stand and bent down. He released a wave of pressure from his body and blocked the pressure that was coming towards them. His old voice was full of energy as he shouted, "Who are you? Come out." "Oh. It's Hunyuanzi from the Nebula Immortal Sect." The voice was heard again. This time, a person walked out from the shadows. With the help of the night light and the two bonfires, they could clearly see that it was an old man in his 60s. He was clearly an old man, but he was wearing a dark red robe, which did not match his aged appearance at all. It was very strange. That person had the appearance of an old man, but his voice was that of a middle-aged man. He did not sound old at all. Right after that old man walked out, some people dressed in black appeared around him as well. Demonic cultivator. It's a demonic cultivator. The appearance of these people no longer concealed their aura. A dense and evil demonic aura spread out, causing everyone to involuntarily take a few steps back. Their sword-wielding hands trembled slightly. It was no wonder that they could kill the night watchman without making a sound. These people were all demonic cultivators. The aura that overflowed from their bodies made people's hearts tremble. Demonic cultivators were cruel and bloodthirsty. Demonic cultivators were the natural enemies of the Orthodox sects and all Orthodox cultivators. Similarly, all Orthodox cultivators were enemies of the demonic cultivators. As long as they encountered the demonic cultivators, regardless of whether there was a grudge between them or not, they would go on a killing spree. They were even more bloodthirsty and ruthless than the Scorpion mercenary group. They hadn't expected that they would still be targeted by a fiendish cultivator even though they had been extremely careful along the way. Just when had they been targeted? They didn't even notice. Hunyuan stared at the old man and frowned. "You're one of the Demon Lord's 10 subordinates, Blood Demon." His tone was firm, and it was clear that he recognized the old man. "Hee, Hunyuan Immortal Lord, you have good eyes." Hunyuan said in a deep voice. When everyone heard Primordial Chaos's words, their hearts warmed. He wanted to protect them and keep them alive. After all, if they were to engage in a chaotic battle with these demonic cultivators, only a handful of them would be able to survive. However, the other party was a demonic cultivator. If they lost, would they really leave with their people? Everyone thought to themselves. They felt uneasy, nervous, and worried. Chapter 2037. The 8 trigrams fist is his famous fist technique. This fist technique is unpredictable and unpredictable. When he punches, it's as if he's trying to stop a horse. When he punches, it's as if he's wading in water. He moves like a dragon and flips like an eagle. He wins through ingenuity. Most of the time, he doesn't show it to others easily. When he uses the 8 trigrams fist, very few people can match him, Zhuo Junyue said slowly as he watched the two fight below. Feng Zhou's eyes flickered. Why did it sound so similar to the I Tai Chi fist? Just as she was thinking, she heard a low shout from below. Blood demon, take my fist. Han Yuanzi let out a low growl and changed his fist technique. His movement technique also followed suit, and his footsteps also changed. She was slightly surprised. The 8 trigrams fist was indeed similar to Tai Chi. When Blood Demon saw the change in his fist, he was delighted. Ha 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 ha. You're finally using the 8 trigrams fist. Then let me have a taste of your 8 trigrams fist. His speed increased again. He clenched his fist and punched out. A powerful airflow followed his fist. When the two fists collided, a red and a white airflow collided. The airflow on their bodies did not give way to each other. As their fists collided, their feet did not idle and attacked each other. His fists changed again and the wind from his fists changed. His footwork was as smooth as flowing water as he punched out with both fists. The two fists struck Bloodseeker's chest and abdomen with a force that was too late to cover one's ears. The hidden force contained in the fists forced Bloodseeker to retreat more than 10 meters and he let out a muffled groan. Blood Demon's feet rubbed against the ground to slow his retreat. 2 long marks were left on the ground. Blood chi rushed up to his throat. He felt a salty taste in his mouth and knew it was blood chi overflowing. In order to not let Han Yuanzi look down on him, he swallowed the blood. The 8 trigrams fist is indeed extraordinary. Again. He stared at Han Yuanzi with a sinister look. The corner of his mouth twitched, revealing a sinister smile. Today, I'll use my Vajra 8 steps to defeat your 8 trigrams fist. Humph. Dream on. Han Yuanzi snorted. Not only is your fist technique inferior to mine, but your strength is also inferior to mine. You want to fight me? You'd better go back and train for another 10 or 20 years. With a single word of disagreement, the two of them began to fight again. Because they had used all of their strength, a powerful pressure pervaded the surroundings, causing the entire air to be shrouded in a low and oppressive aura. About 10 moves later, the Blood Demon was hit by Master Huanyuan's fist again. This time, one could clearly hear the sound of his ribs breaking and blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Han Yuanzi snorted and put his hands on his hips, a smug look on his face. How about it? Didn't the old man say that you're not my match? Why aren't you taking your men and scramming back? Blood Demon raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the smug Han Yuan and revealed a strange smile. Is that so? I'm no match for you. Then let's try again. Again. This old man doesn't have the time to play with you again and again. Han Yuan frowned. He stared at Bloodseeker and threatened, if you don't take her away now, I'll most likely take your life this time. You better think it through. Chapter 2039. Fengzhou glanced at him and raised his eyebrows. What are you trying to do? Don't tell me you're going to fight the Blood Demon. The old man had fallen for his trap. He would have been suicidal if he had stepped forward. Take care of him. Zhuo Junyue looked at the Blood Demon in front of him as he spoke. At the same time, Second Master Chai walked up and stood beside Zhuo Junyue. The Blood Demon laughed when he saw the two approaching. He looked at them mockingly and disdainfully. What are the two of you trying to do? The two of you are not worthy of my attention, nor are you worthy of my attention. However, since you want to die one by one, I have all the time in the world to play with you. He took a step back as he spoke and gestured for the two people beside him to step forward. Go and teach these two a lesson. Show them our strength. Yes. The two of them answered. They flew forward and unsheathed their long swords. Han Rong was still standing beside the blood demon. However, she was now looking at the young man in green. However, the people from the other families had surrounded them and blocked the figures of Han Yuanzi and the young man in green. They could not see what they were doing. Feng Jiu was helping Han Yuanzi check his wounds. When he lifted his shirt, he saw the wounds caused by the sharp nails on his gloves. Feng Jiu's eyes narrowed slightly. He treated the wounds while he spoke mercilessly. Old man, didn't you say you were very powerful? How could you be injured like this by someone weaker than you? Look at you now. Do you look anything like the immortal sex Mount Tai? As the poison in his body flared up, the old man's aura gradually weakened. When he heard Feng Jiu's words, he replied unwillingly, I was careless. Who would have thought that the blood demon would be so shameless? He couldn't beat me, so he resorted to underhanded means. If I were him, I would have done the same. Only you would follow the rules when dealing with a demonic cultivator. Feng Jiu sneered. He took out a pill and stuffed it into the old man's mouth. Where did this come from? Let me have a look. When he took out the pill, he smelled a strong medicinal fragrance. Just as he was about to check what grade the pill was, he was forced into his mouth. He only felt the pill slide down his throat, and a cool aura flowed through his body. Immortal Monarch is so heavily injured, and we're surrounded by demonic cultivators. I'm afraid we won't be able to escape. A disciple beside him said, his face filled with unconcealable worry. Chai Feng stood beside Feng Jiu and asked hopefully, Xiao Jiu, do you have any other ideas? What can I do? These devil cultivators are not easy to deal with. She curled her lips and pricked his 10 fingers to force out the poison, saying, Old man, you owe me a life. How long will it take to recover? Han Yuan asked, worried about the battle ahead. Feng Jiu glanced at him. Chapter 2040. But how could Han Yuan calm himself down to regulate his breathing? If he couldn't fight, wouldn't they be at the mercy of others? There's still a pill here. Keep it and eat it. Feng Jiu gave him a pill bottle, then stood up and walked forward. The two demonic cultivators in front of them were no match for Zhuo Junyue and Second Master Chai. After a brief battle, both demonic cultivators were injured. One of them even had his arm cut off by Zhuo Junyue. The thick smell of blood permeated the air. The blood demon narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Zhuo Junyue. I didn't expect you to have some skills. The two demonic cultivators covered their wounds and retreated. They stared at the two of them viciously. Zhuo Junyue turned his sword and pointed it at the ground. He didn't say anything and just stared at the blood demon cautiously. Feng Jiu walked forward and glanced at the demonic cultivators. Her gaze naturally swept past Han Rong. She smiled inwardly when she saw him staring at her. No matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to guess who she was. This time, she wouldn't let him escape. Han Rong looked at the young man in green. The more he looked at him, the more he felt that there was something wrong with him. However, he couldn't put his finger on it. Thus, he moved closer to the blood demon and whispered a few words to him. After hearing Han Rong's whisper, the blood demon looked at Feng Jiu playfully. Oh. What's so special about this kid? Why can't I tell? Han Rong looked at the young man in green and said in a low voice, this young man doesn't seem to be afraid. His expression is calmer than the others. I feel that something is wrong. However, his cultivation is only at the gold core stage. I can't tell what is wrong. Is that so? Since there's something wrong, why don't you test him? The blood demon glanced at him and said. Han Rong froze when he heard this. However, he could only reply, yes. He walked forward and looked at the young man in green. He drew his sword and pointed it forward. You, come out. Fengjiu raised an eyebrow when she saw the sword pointed at her. You're calling me? She took a step forward but was stopped by Zhuo Junue. Go back. Zhuo Junue frowned as he looked at Fengjiu. He raised his hand and stepped in front of Fengjiu. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled. He's pointing his sword at me. How can I dodge? One had to know that she had been looking for an opportunity to kill Han Rong. Now that the opportunity had presented itself to her, how could she let it go so easily? Zhuo Junue frowned as he watched Feng Nine walk out from behind him. She walked forward step by step. You want to fight me? I accept. She smiled and squinted her eyes. Looking at this scene, Han Yuan was somewhat worried and couldn't help but yell, "Little bastard, come back here." Everyone from the Chai family, as well as Fan Yishio and the others, were shocked. What was Xiao Zhou trying to do? He was only in the Golden Core realm. Did he want to die? Compared to the worry of Master Han Yuan and the others, Han Rong looked at the azure-robed young man slowly walking over. Not only was he not afraid, he even gave him a mysterious smile. Seeing that smile, Han Rong felt a bit strange. Who was this young man? Why did he give off such a dangerous feeling? Chapter 2042. The number of wounds on his body increased one after another. He had narrowly escaped death time and time again, and this made him tremble with fear, but he also felt ashamed and angry. That damnable Feng Jiu. She seemed to be able to kill him with every move, but she was able to injure him 70% without directly taking his life. She was playing him like a monkey. Did she want to watch him bleed to death? Did she want to torture him before he died? Damn it, he wouldn't let her have her way. He thought fiercely. Since the blood demon and the others didn't want to save him, he would drag Fengjiu down with him even if he had to die. Thinking of this, he clenched his teeth and mobilized the spiritual power in his body. He was going to use all his strength to fight Fengjiu. However, Fengjiu seemed to have seen through his intentions. Before he could attack, she had already rushed toward him. The dagger in her hand flashed coldly and slashed toward his throat. Swish! The dangerous slash left a shallow wound on his neck. The fear of death and the other party's teasing made him furious. He glared at her. I'll be ruthless with you. Hearing this, Fengjiu sneered. So he didn't want to be ruthless with her. He was clearly anxious. Seeing the wounds all over his body open up, except for the wound on his neck, every cut was so deep that the bone could be seen. She felt that it was about time. This Han Rong was also pushed to the edge by her. The killing intent in her heart stirred. Her figure flashed, and the blade of the dagger pierced towards his lifeline. The blood demon, who had been watching, saw the murderous intent contained in the green-robed young man's blade. He could not help but look at Han Rong, who had stepped forward, and revealed a sinister smile. His sinister voice rang out at this moment. Not just anyone can kill the people under my command. As the blood demon spoke, he flicked his hand and a stream of air attacked from his hand. He wanted to knock away the dagger in Fengjiu's hand. However, at that moment, Fengjiu threw the dagger in her hand into the air. She rushed forward and dodged the blood demon's attack. After catching the dagger, she turned around and stabbed it toward Han Rong's chest. Swish! The sharp aura of the blade spread out. With a muffled groan, Han Rong stepped back. He glared at Fengjiu with unwillingness and hatred. He clutched his chest with one hand to stop the blood from gushing out. He was unwilling to fall. Just as the blood demon was surprised that Han Rong was able to dodge his attack, he saw Han Rong try to escape with his nascent soul after falling to the ground. A strange light flashed through the blood demon's eyes. He thought about how Han Rong's body was so heavily injured. If he didn't escape with his nascent soul, he might really die here today. Just as he was thinking about it, his nascent soul flew out from the body. However, just as the nascent soul escaped, the youth jumped up and tried to grab the nascent soul. Seeing this, he once again tried to stop the youth from killing the nascent soul. However, just as he sent out a gust of wind, the youth dodged to the side and waved his hand, letting out a roar eat him. Fengzhou's cold voice came out. She waved her sleeve and a ray of light flew out. It instantly turned into a fierce beast and swallowed the nascent soul. Roar! Chapter 2043. This sudden scene had already stunned everyone. Whether it was the demonic cultivators or the people on Han Yuan's side, all of them had their mouths wide open as they stared at the youth in green, only feeling that it was inconceivable. The majestic and mighty cloud-swallowing beast was already at the level of a sacred beast. At this moment, it stood obediently beside the youth, smacking its lips as if it was recalling the taste of the nascent soul that it had just swallowed. As for the youth in green, his temperament and aura seemed to have changed in an instant. The originally simple and honest youth was now filled with a devilish and wanton aura. The night wind gently blew, blowing his hair, allowing them to see the corners of the youth's lips curl up slightly, as well as the languid and arrogant voice that came from his mouth. If I want to kill someone, no one will be able to escape. Fengzhou's chin was slightly raised, her eyebrows were full of wanton and arrogance. At this moment, she no longer restrained her aura, that noble temperament, that powerful aura that had been in a high position for a long time, naturally flowed out. There were only corpses left on the ground, and the nascent soul that had tried to escape had already been swallowed by the sacred beast. The surroundings were silent, only the sound of breathing and the rustling of the leaves on the ground being blown by the wind could be heard. This kid has hidden his strength. Han Yuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, muttered with his eyes wide open. There was actually a time when he had misjudged. This kid's skills and strength, most likely, were far more than what they saw now. No wonder he was unwilling to acknowledge him as his master, so it was because he himself had such strength and a contracted beast. A sacred beast. TSK, not simple. Seeing this, Zhou Jun's eyes flashed with surprise. No wonder he had always felt that this youth gave him a very strange feeling, so it was because of this. To be able to have such a sacred beast, how could his cultivation be only at the golden core stage? That meant, he had suppressed his strength. The people of the Chai family were also dumbfounded. That simple and honest-looking Xiao Zhou, actually had such a ferocious and powerful contracted beast. That was a sacred beast, right? Fan Yishuo was also shocked as he looked at the green-clothed youth. This youth had been very low-key along the way, but had saved them twice. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that the person just now was the one who had smiled and called him Big Brother Fan. How could such a person be a member of the Chai family? At this moment, he couldn't help but wonder. As for the people from the Chai clan, after recovering from their shock, they thought that the Nebula Immortal sect was truly a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even Xiao Zhou, this seemingly honest and thin youth, actually had such ability and had such a powerful contract beast. As expected of one of the four great immortal sects. The blood demon looked at the sacred beast, and the interest in his eyes grew stronger. He stared at the young man, and saw that the young man's cultivation level was still at the golden core stage. However, Because he did not restrain his chi, he could faintly see that he was different from before. This made him curious. Who exactly was this young man? Who are you? Chapter 2044. Why do you care who I am? Fengjiu glanced around and snorted. Are you going to take your men away? Or do you want to fight me? It's up to you. But let me tell you, I'm not as easy to deal with as the old man. Han Yuanzi, who was sitting cross-legged at the back, heard this and his mouth twitched. What did he mean by not as easy to deal with as the old man? Did he mean that the old man was inferior to him? This little rascal was indeed a little rascal. He didn't know how to respect the old at all. Hearing Fengjiu's words, the blood demon laughed and looked at him with interest. Do you think you're qualified to fight me? Fengjiu smiled. You can try whether I'm qualified or not. Do you want to fight one-on-one or in a group battle? It's up to you. In a one-on-one fight, she might not be a match for the blood demon. If it was a group battle, she could let the contracted beasts in her space come out and exercise. Although the Fire Phoenix didn't come this time, both Tun Yun and Lao Bai were not weak. Seeing the arrogance and confidence between the young man's brows, the blood demon laughed sinisterly. Since you've killed my men, I should come and meet you. I want to see how capable you are. As soon as he finished speaking, a dark red figure flashed past like a ghost. His hand turned into a claw and grabbed at Fengjiu. Fengjiu still held the dagger in his hand. With a twist of his hand, the dagger glinted with a sharp light and stabbed at the claw. Seeing this, the blood demon immediately changed his claw into a palm. The wind from his palm hit Fengjiu's hand that was holding the dagger. She turned around and dodged. While her footwork changed, she didn't stop attacking. The two of them exchanged blows. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. Not to mention that the blood demon's battle experience was not something that Fengjiu could compare to. His strength and cultivation were not something that ordinary people could deal with. Once the pressure of an expert was released, it would be difficult for weaker people to even straighten their backs in front of him. However, this young man could fight the blood demon without the slightest fear of his celestial sage aura. What did this mean? It meant that this young man's strength was not inferior to his. Freak! What a freakish monster! His bone age was so young, yet he had the same strength as an old monster. What kind of cultivation speed was this? It was too heaven-defying. No wonder that devil cultivator from before couldn't resist at all. No wonder that devil cultivator didn't hesitate to use his nascent soul to escape in order to find a way out. How could the blood demon, who was fighting with Fengjiu? He did not know what kind of thoughts had appeared in his mind, but he suddenly took a few steps back and stared at the young boy in front of him. He saw that the young boy had a delicate and handsome face, and there was a hint of confidence and coldness between his brows. His eyes were very beautiful, and the light in his eyes was sharp and intimidating. Looking at the young boy again, although his body was thin, it seemed that he had not yet grown up. If his body grew up in another 2 years, he could be a well-built young boy. Chapter 2045. Fengjiu frowned when he saw the blood demon suddenly retreat and look at her with that gaze. His expression turned cold. She was all too familiar with that gaze. The person who looked at her with that gaze didn't see her as a person, but as an object. Brat, the more I look at you, the more I like you. How about you come to my side? I can promise you a bright future. The blood demon said with a smile. He thought that if he smiled, he would look amiable. However, he didn't know that it would have been better if he didn't smile. His smile made him look even stranger. Fengjiu sneered. But I don't like you. You're already so old, yet you're still wearing red. You're such an eyesore. The blood demon's eyes narrowed, and a sinister look flashed through his eyes. Ha! Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for being impolite. Today, whether you're willing or not, you're mine. With that, the dark red figure attacked Fingzhou. Fingzhou's eyes turned cold, and spiritual power surged from his body as he rushed forward. Seeing the two fighting, Hunyuan was so angry that he cursed, "Old bastard, you perverted old bastard. What do you mean by, whether you're willing or not? I never thought that this old thing was such a perverted thing." The others were also bewildered when they heard the blood demon's words. Did the blood demon take a liking to Fingzhou? Could it be that an old guy like the blood demon was also a homosexual? For a moment, everyone looked at the two people in front of them with strange expressions, and they forgot to fear their current situation. Only Shui Junhua pondered after hearing the blood demon's words. He didn't think that the blood demon would have such thoughts. He should be thinking, seeing the youth's outstanding skills and cultivation, a thought flashed through his mind. He wanted to possess him. He wanted to keep Fingzhou by his side so that he could possess him when his lifespan was nearing its end. Thinking of this, his gaze darkened, and he pursed his lips as he looked at the scene in front of him. He wondered if Fingzhou had a chance to win. If he lost to the blood demon, no one here would be able to escape. Fingzhou would also fall into his hands and become his pet. Just as he was thinking, he heard a loud bang. He looked up and saw that the green-robed youth, Fengzhou, had been pushed back by the blood demon. He staggered back a dozen steps. Seeing this scene, his heart sank. Just as he was about to go forward, he was stopped by the old man. "Junhua, come here." Hun Yuanzi called out in a deep voice. He frowned as he looked at the scene in front of him. There was a thoughtful look in his wise eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Shui Junhua looked back at him and then at Feng Nine in front of him. He then walked up to him and asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" "This old man." The blood demon used the Vajra 7-step fist against the youth. How could the youth withstand it? The Vajra 7-step fist was the blood demon's famous martial technique. Hunyuan glanced at him and said, "You're not even as strong as that little bastard. Don't go up and cause trouble for him. Just watch from the side. You think he can handle it?" Shui Junhua asked with a frown. "That is hard to say." Chapter 2046. Shui Junhua was very surprised to hear this. This was indirectly admitting that the little bastard's cultivation was very strong. If he could even defeat the blood demon, then there was no need for him to take him as his master. If it wasn't for the scene in front of him, even if the little bastard himself told him that he was so strong that he didn't need to take him as his master, he wouldn't believe it. He can't deal with the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist. As Shui Junhua spoke, he looked at the youth who was retreating under the blood demon's attacks with a trace of worry in his eyes. Seeing that Fingzhou's attacks were suppressed by the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist, Master Hunyuan was also worried, so he began to complain. "This brat, I told him to take me as his master, but he didn't listen. Tell me, with his talent, if he took me as his master and learned my 8 trigrams fist, why would he be afraid of the blood demon? I'll go help him." Shui Junhua spoke and was about to go forward, but he was pulled back by the old man. "Wait, look, that little bastard's posture seems to have changed." The old man pulled Shui Junhua with one hand and looked at the youth who was forced back by the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist. Shui Junhua's eyes flashed as he looked forward. Indeed, after the young man was pushed back again, his aura and posture had changed. After he was pushed back, he squatted down and placed his palms together. With one hand lowered and the other raised, he stared at the blood demon. His aura had been completely restrained by his posture, making it difficult for the young man to understand what was going on. However, when the youth took a step forward, his originally lightning-fast steps became as light as a cat's steps. At the same time, his hands moved and his spirit force surged. The blood demon clenched his fist and let out a roar. A Vajra 7 steps fist containing 500 kilograms of force was thrown at him. However, the youth moved slowly and nimbly to the side. He nimbly grabbed the blood demon's hand and used the force to push back the 500 kilograms of force. Bang! Ah! With a bang, Bloodseeker was pushed back more than 20 meters. He crashed into a large tree behind him and let out a muffled groan. The tree he was leaning against broke with a crack, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. With a gloomy gaze, he looked at the young man who was leisurely moving his hands. He watched as the young man gathered the surrounding spiritual aura between his hands, forming a circle that was visible to the naked eye. What fist technique is this? Blood Demon asked in a gloomy voice. He raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. His 1,000 pounds of strength was actually deflected back by him with little effort. How could there be such a powerful technique in this world? Hun Yuanzi's eyes widened when he saw this. Moreover, Xiaojiu did not have a weapon in his hand, only the dagger that he had previously hidden in his boot. This shameless old thing. He can't beat me, so he wants to play dirty. Han Yuanzi also cursed angrily. Zhou Junhua frowned and wanted to go forward, but he saw that the old man's hand was still on his shoulder. He looked back at him and said, "Do you want to watch him die?" In a short period of time, they had even united the powers in the lower reaches of the continent, making it impossible for them to attack. This ghost Dr. Fingzhou had even been repeatedly warned by the Demon Lord not to provoke her. Who would have thought that they would actually meet her again in this fire forest? At this moment, she thought of the method she used to kill Han Rong. She thought of how she only attacked Han Rong. Even when Han Rong escaped with her nascent soul, she still did not let her off. She finally understood. So she was Fingzhou, she was the ghost Dr. Fingzhou. What? What ghost Dr. Fingzhou? What girl? Chapter 2049. However, the old man's voice was clearly weak when he spoke, as if he lacked confidence. He stared at Fingzhou with a strange expression, sizing him up again and again. No one knew what he was thinking, but his expression was very strange. The others also looked in front of them in astonishment. Why did the blood demon say that Fingzhou was a woman? Wasn't he a man? That couldn't be, right? Zhou Junyue's gaze shifted slightly as he looked Fingzhou up and down, deep in thought. Fan Yishou was also stunned. A woman? That couldn't be, right? No matter how you look at him, he's still a young man. Even if he's a little handsome, he has nothing to do with being a woman. There's no trace of a woman's shyness or bashfulness on Fingzhou's body. How could he be a woman? Furthermore, they've been quite familiar with each other all this time. If he were a woman, how could they not recognize him? The blood demon ignored them. He cautiously took a step back and stared at the smiling young man in front of him. His embarrassment turned into anger as he shouted, "The great ghost Dr. Fingzhou has disguised herself as a man. It's one thing, but you've even changed your appearance and disguised yourself like this. What? Are you ashamed of yourself?" Unfortunately, he couldn't tell that this young man was a woman and still wanted to possess him. He really didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he, a dignified blood demon, was trapped in a woman's body. However, when he thought of this, he took a deep breath. His opponent was the ghost Dr. Fingzhou, someone who even the demon sovereign feared. How could he be so easily captured? He had thought too simply of the situation. Fingzhou twirled the emerald-edged sword in her hand and raised her eyes to look at the blood demon. Her lips curled into a smile that wasn't quite a smile. I didn't think that the great blood demon would know of me. I'm truly honored. Humph. Fingzhou, I know your target was Han Rong. Now that Han Rong is dead, the enmity between us is over. I won't fuss about it with you today. As he spoke, the blood devil retreated step by step, and at the same time, he waved his hand to signal the other devil cultivators to retreat. Fingzhou didn't give chase as she watched the blood demon retreat. She just stood there and watched. At the same time, a cold voice mixed with spiritual energy came from her mouth. Tell your demon sovereign that one day, I will flatten your demon palace. Hearing this, the blood demon felt a lump in his throat. He turned around and stared at the green figure with a gloomy face. He replied in a gloomy voice, Our demon hall will be waiting for you at any time. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of devil cultivators disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. All that was left was the faint smell of blood in the air, as well as the astonishment and disbelief of the surrounding crowd. They all left just like that. Those demonic cultivators who couldn't even beat primordial chaos ran away after recognizing Fingzhou's identity. Everyone was dumbfounded. Some of them stared blankly at the green figure in front of them, only feeling that it was inconceivable. What was the background of this ghost Dr. Fingzhou? Could it be that just by flashing the ancient divine sword and mentioning the name of ghost Dr. Fingzhou, he could scare off the devil cultivators? Moreover, even the blood demon, one of the 10 great devil cultivators under the demon sovereign, was scared off. Were they seeing things? At this moment, everyone was shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. This was something that they had never encountered before. It was too strange, too unbelievable. Also, if the ghost Dr. Fingzhou that the blood demon was talking about was the young man in front of them, then wasn't he her? A woman. Chapter 2050. Fingzhou turned around when she sensed the gazes of the people behind her. When she met their curious and admiring gazes, she said helplessly, Actually, one of the main reasons I entered the volcano forest was to kill that person. She pointed her Qingfeng sword at Han Rong's corpse on the ground. Her words told them that she was neither from the Nebula Immortal sect nor from the Chai family. Fan Yishio and the rest, as well as Second Master Chai's group, all stared at her with their mouths agape. They had thought that she was one of the other party's people, but after all this time, she had snuck in from nowhere. Xiao Zhou, you are really a woman. Chai Feng stared at her with a strange expression. He could not imagine what this young man would look like in female clothing. Yes, I am a girl. She smiled. This smile did not have the evil charm she had when she accepted the challenge. Instead, it had the friendliness of a girl next door. But how can you be a girl? You. He looked her up and down and pointed at Fingzhou's flat chest. He wanted to ask, but he could not bring himself to ask. Kid, what are you asking? If she says she is a girl, then she must be a girl. Why do you have so many questions? Second Master Chai patted Chai Feng's head to stop him from asking. Feng Jiao smiled and didn't say anything else. She wiped the Qingfeng sword and prepared to put it away. However, a figure walked in front of her at this moment. This is the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng sword. May I have a look? Shuai Junyue stood in front of Fingzhou and looked at the sword in her hand. Fengjiu was slightly surprised when she heard this, but she still handed the Qingfeng sword to him. Don't touch it with your hands. The Qingfeng sword's aura will hurt you, she reminded him. Han Yuan, who was behind them, was stunned. What's wrong with Junyue? Why is he interested in the Qingfeng sword? Although the emerald-edged sword was an ancient godly sword and even he was curious about it, it would be inappropriate for him to play around with other people's swords. Thank you. Shui Junyue took the sword and took a look. The words Qingfeng sword were engraved on the blade and the sword aura was extremely sharp. Looking at the sword in his hand, his gaze flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he returned the Qingfeng sword to Fengjiu. He looked at her and asked, "How did you get this sword?" Shui Junyue was not a person who would overstep the bounds of propriety. Yet, such a person had done two unreasonable things in a row. After hearing his words, Fengjiu gave him a deep look. This azure-edged sword originally belonged to my master. He hid it in the myriad sword mound. When I first became his disciple, the second thing he told me to do was to enter the myriad sword mound to find the azure-edged sword. He sent me into the myriad sword mound, and I personally found it and brought it out. He glanced at him and said, "You're too old. I won't accept you." Hearing that he was being ignored, Han Yuanzi anxiously stomped his feet. How am I old? Didn't you say that my face was rosy and my skin was smooth without any wrinkles? Why are you complaining that I'm old now? Chapter 2052. Tun Yun leaped into the forest with Fengjiu. Han Yuanzi panicked when he saw this. Wait for me. Wait for me, old man. He shouted and was about to chase after them when someone pulled him back. Senior Granduncle. Fan Yishio pulled him back and asked, Senior Granduncle, what should we do if you leave? They had not reached the depths of the forest yet. If they left, it would be difficult for them to reach the depths of the forest. Let go. Let go. The old man swung his hand and looked back at them angrily. What do you mean? Do you still need to ask me such a simple question? That little bastard has left, and this old man has to chase after him. I definitely won't be able to protect you. Hurry up and go back along the original path. Hurry up and get out of this volcano forest. Otherwise, if you continue to walk forward, who knows what you'll encounter. Second Master Chai nodded. You're right, Immortal Monarch. That's what I plan to do too. If all of them left, then they naturally couldn't go any further. They had already encountered enough on this trip, and it was too dangerous to go in without the protection of a strong warrior. This Fire Mountain forest wasn't a place they could come to, so it was better to leave, lest the younger generation of the clan die here. Fan Yishio was startled when he heard this. He looked at Han Yuanzi and Second Master Chai. After a long while, he turned to his junior brothers and sisters. What do you all plan to do? They looked at each other and said, Eldest senior brother, we also think that it's better to leave. Moreover, we want to go home after we get out of here. Fan Yishio nodded. That's good. Let's leave it at that. He looked at Han Yuanzi and said, Senior Granduncle, in the future. Before he could finish, he saw Han Yuanzi rushing forward. At the same time, his anxious voice was carried by the wind. All right. Don't talk too much to the old man. Hurry up and go back. The old man wants to find that little bastard. If we don't go after her, she'll be far away. Junyue, hurry up. After hearing his words, Shui Junyue nodded to the others and rushed forward to catch up with the old man. You're still injured. Don't you have a mount? Why don't you use it? With this reminder, Hunyuanzi was startled. That's right. I have a mount too. I've really been angered to the point of stupidity by that little bastard. I almost forgot that this old man also has a mount. As he spoke excitedly, he summoned his mount and leaped onto it. At the same time, he ordered his mount to run forward. Seeing this, Zhou Junyue raised his qi and followed closely behind Hunyuanzi, searching for Fingzhou. After watching them leave, Second Master Chai sighed and turned around to look at the crowd. The sky is getting brighter. Let's hurry up and leave. We should be more vigilant on the way back. Yes. Everyone responded. After they were done, they quickly left. However, as they walked, there were still many people who looked back. They felt that this trip to the volcano forest was really unforgettable. Everything that happened along the way would still be remembered clearly after a long time. On the other side, Fengzhou was in a good mood after finally killing Han Rong. Now that Han Rong was dead, all she had to do was go to the depths of the volcano forest to find some firespark stones and bring them back. Then she could leave this place. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.